guys, I'm Calluna, and welcome to another Patreon-sponsored review of Screenshots. So everybody knows the story of the boy who wouldn't grow up, Peter Pan. It's been adapted into numerous film, television, plays, you name it. He's one of the most beloved characters of all time. Now nowadays, when you think of Peter Pan, you tend to think of one of two films, either the Disney animated film or Hook. But there's one version that everyone seems to have forgotten about, the 2003 live-action film. It was the first to actually have a young male actor playing Peter from the original story. Since Hook is a sequel, it kinda doesn't count. The 2003 film was praised for its faithfulness to the original source material, but it ended up being a box office bomb. I do recall seeing the movie in theaters and enjoying it back then, but it definitely did not stand the test of time in terms of memorability. This is very clearly a film that's trying to homage the original book it's based on. I wonder if I could get advice from anybody who does adaptations.
Ah.
There's gotta be someone. I guess not.
Oh.
Let's take a look at the 2003 version of Peter Pan. The opening of the film begins with a quote. So within the first 10 seconds, we already know what kind of adaptation we're going to be in for with regards to this movie. So you might be thinking, Calluna, wait, isn't that the opening line to the original story? Almost. The actual opening line is, all children except one grow up. And sure, it is all the same words, just changed around slightly to fit the movie format. It makes more dramatic sense to have the except one be the sentence end, since then we have the title of the movie following it. And that's basically how the rest of the movie goes. For the most part, this stays very loyal to Barry's original work, but there are quite a number of changes that they make, a lot of them having to do with the transition from book to film. Not all these changes are bad, in fact, a number of them were actually very good. Wendy is much more active in the fights along with her brothers and the Lost Boys, for example, making her less of a damsel in distress character than her book counterpart. That's a change that works for a 21st century movie audience. And out of the numerous movie adaptations, this is definitely the one that feels the most faithful to the original book, at least in terms of story and dialogue. But that means when they do make changes, it's just that much more noticeable. It's clear that the filmmakers were trying very hard to keep this film as loyal to the source material as they could. A good amount of the dialogue is straight out of the book, and an older Wendy acts as a narrator, filling in bits of exposition here and there when needed. Like how the fairies, since they're so small, can only really feel one emotion at a time, which explains a lot of Tinkerbell's mood swings. Most of the time, the exposition doesn't feel out of place. It's usually very helpful for giving context, since a lot of Barry's writing can be difficult to pin down. He is a big fan of metaphorical and illustrious language. And since storytelling is such an inherent part of the Peter Pan mythos, it feels like a natural addition here. As the film begins, we are introduced to Wendy Darling, telling stories to her two younger brothers, John and Michael. They are dressed up in costumes and sword fight in the nursery the three of them share. This is definitely a much more modern interpretation of the Wendy character. She does enjoy playing the mother and storyteller figure, but at the same time she's also very adventurous, enjoys sword fighting, and even wants to be a novelist when she grows up. These are changes I definitely don't mind. The Wendy of Barry's book is very clearly a product of her time, and the heart of the character does still remain the same in this film, though she is slightly more adventurous. We are introduced to the rest of the household, Wendy's parents, George and Mary, and their nurse, Nana, who is an adorable Saint Bernard. The movie does point out it is unusual for a dog to be a nurse, but since Nana is so good at it, Mr. Darling doesn't really mind. For those only familiar with the Disney version, Mr. Darling, here anyway, is much more practical and no-nonsense compared to the animated version, but when his masculinity is threatened, he will have bursts of uncontrolled anger that frighten his children. Mrs. Darling is usually there to calm him down and keep things from getting out of hand. One of the most obvious additions to the film is the new character of Aunt Millicent.
Heavens! Hook! 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 Whose eyes turn red as he guts you.
Upon myself, our children are educated nowadays.
She tells Mr. and Mrs. Darling that Wendy is starting to become more of an adult, and she wants to have Wendy spend more time with her to learn how to be a proper lady. She even suggests separating Wendy from her brothers, which comes into play later on. One night, Wendy wakes up to find Peter Pan flying above her bed and even doodles about it at school the next day. Unfortunately, her teacher spots it and sends a courier to her father at his workplace. In an attempt to stop this, Wendy ends up getting her father in trouble at work due to Nana crashing into the courier and causing a huge scene. Mr. Darling is so upset about what happened that he chains Nana outside and tells Wendy that after tonight she will get her own room and she needs to grow up. Of course, this is one of those times that the changes aren't exactly subtle. Of course, it's the last night before Wendy has to grow up that Peter is going to come and offer to take her away to Neverland. Peter is the temptation she seeks, a way to avoid her responsibilities, to stay with her brothers, and to not have to grow up and become a proper lady. It sort of feels like the movie is beating the audience upside the head with how obvious this is. This is already inherent in the way the story was written. There's really no need to add this extra incentive. There are times when the script feels a bit out of place because it is keeping so strict to the source material. One example from the book that really confused me in the movie was the whole hidden kiss thing. The book says that Mrs. Darling has this hidden kiss which no one can access, not even her husband. I think it's supposed to be a metaphor for some small part of her that nobody else can see. What exactly that is, I guess, is up to the reader. It's not exactly straightforward, thank you, J.M. Barrie writing. But the movie acts as if this is totally a thing that everyone can see and recognize, but it's not really explained.
Is that a kiss?
A kiss. Like Mother's kiss.
A hidden kiss?
Aunt Millicent says that Wendy has one now, so I guess we're supposed to think of it as a metaphor for maturity or first love, maybe? It's a bit weird and difficult to wrap your head around, and I don't think it was necessary for the film. The last time Peter came to look in on the Darling family, his shadow got snagged off him and got locked into a drawer. So Peter and Tinkerbell have returned to come and find it. When Peter can't reattach the shadow, he starts crying, and Wendy wakes up. After some introductions, Wendy sews back on Peter's shadow. He asks her to come away with him to Neverland. And this is definitely one of the times that I'm very happy that they stuck with the original dialogue as, say, compared to the Disney version.
Although Father says...
Girls talk too much.
Yes, girls talk to... Oh.
Well, get on with it, girl.
Wendy, one girl's worth more than 20 boys.
You really think so?
Wendy and Peter have this cute exchange where he misunderstands what a kiss is. He sticks out his hand like he's supposed to be getting an object. She gives Peter a thimble and he gives her an acorn in exchange, which she makes into a necklace. Tinkerbell does not like Wendy and prevents her from giving Peter a real kiss, calling it a thimble, which just makes the conversation more absurd. So this is another example where they are taking a lot of the dialogue from the book but kind of rearranging it to suit the movie's needs. In the book, Peter doesn't really understand the significance of a kiss. Wendy does actually give him one. It's when Peter's going to give her one in exchange that Tinkerbell does prevent her from getting it. However, in the book, after getting the kiss, Peter just doesn't really understand the significance of it and doesn't really think about it. It doesn't totally change his mind about anything. However, the film, it's very clearly building up a romance between Wendy and Peter, which we will get to later. Wendy manages to convince Peter to let her brothers join them on the journey, and Peter teaches them all to fly. Gotta give props to the filmmakers on this. The flying does, for the most part, look pretty seamless. I watched some behind the scenes to see how they had done the flying, and it's actually really cool. They wanted to make the movement look more fluid, so they used these green-screened astronaut-looking devices to allow more range for flying. Now, while the actual movement of the flying looks great, all the CG behind it does not. The initial shots of the kids flying throughout London didn't look too bad at first, but after a minute or so, it doesn't really look all that impressive. I also really don't like the overabundance of this blue filter that they're using throughout the majority of the film. It just constantly looks like they're doing day for night shots. The CGI that does work for me, though, is Tinkerbell. It's a good mix of motion capture and CG. The actress playing Tinkerbell has a wonderfully expressive face, and I'm glad to hear that they were impressed with her enough to change their minds about an entirely CGI Tinkerbell. I did notice that the best use of the CG was when it was mixed with practical effects well. On its own, not as great. Once Peter arrives back in Neverland, we see that the weather changes from winter to spring. Okay, so in this version, anytime Peter leaves Neverland, the weather reflects his absence? Okay, sure, whatever you need to get Jason Isaacs to do a dramatic, "He's back."
He's back.
Okay, so let's talk about Jason Isaacs, aka the best part of this whole movie. His version of Hook encompasses all the different parts of Captain Hook. His charm, wit, arrogance, anger, and madness. You can see why the pirates follow him and why the Lost Boys are afraid of him. He manages to strike a really good balance of being villainous and entertaining, something I never quite got with the Disney version. Disney Hook seemed too funny, too silly to really be taken seriously as a villain. Here, Hook is dangerous and unpredictable. After spotting the kids hiding in the clouds, the pirates open fire at them, splitting them up. Wendy is spotted by the Lost Boys, who think she's some kind of bird. With the addition of the Lost Boys, that now puts us at 10 kids. That's a lot of possibilities for terrible child actors, but I'm actually really surprised that the majority of the kids were actually really good. I didn't really have any major problems with them. That's incredibly rare, especially for so many kids. I'd say out of all of them, my favorite is probably Slightly, just because he gets a lot of really good one-liners and he's just so adorable.
She must stay here and die.
No!
How could I have thought that? Stupid. Sorry.
Tinkerbell, jealous over Peter paying more attention to Wendy, tells the Lost Boys that they need to shoot the Wendy bird on Peter's orders.
It is a lady. And Tootles.
Tootles has killed her!
Thankfully, the acorn Peter gave Wendy protects her from getting killed, and she's merely unconscious after hitting the ground. Peter then tells the boys to build a house around Wendy since they don't want to move her. After finding out Tink was the one who told the boys to shoot Wendy, Peter banishes her and she leaves, upset. Meanwhile, John and Michael fall into a forest and get stuck in a trap made by Tiger Lily. She laughs at them and falls out of the tree she's hiding in, only to then be found by Hook and his gang of pirates. Hook takes John, Michael, and Tiger Lily to the Black Castle as bait to lure Peter into a trap. Peter takes Wendy to the Mermaid Lagoon to ask the mermaids if they know where John and Michael are. And for some reason, the movie makes them into these dark, siren-like creatures that try to lure you and drown you. Why? This seems like a totally unnecessary change. In the book, the mermaids are just like normal mermaids. They're kinda vain and spoiled and only really pay attention to Peter and ignore everybody else, but they're not like sirens. They're not trying to drown people. They're just regular mermaids. It doesn't really make any sense. My guess is that the filmmakers were trying to showcase that there is sort of a darker side to Neverland, something that the Disney version and Hook definitely toned down considerably, but the mermaids are only there for 5 seconds. They're just there to tell them where to go to move along in the plot. It just seems like a waste of time to add all this to characters that are literally there for like a minute. Peter and Wendy sneak into the Black Castle, and when Hook goes out to check on a noise made by Wendy, Peter uses his great imitation skills to trick Smee and totally not making out of this scene a live pirate into letting the kids go free. Hook comes back, realizes what they've done, and shoots the red shirt. Then we get a pretty cool action scene with Hook and Peter crossing swords, Wendy fighting another pirate, and the rest of the pirates coming out of hiding to fight the other kids. These fight scenes are actually pretty well choreographed, and it is nice to see that the girls are getting a piece of the action too.
Girly?
Who be you to call me girly?
So in the book, Tiger Lily is just a damsel for Peter to save. Weirdly enough, Tiger Lily seems to have a bit of a crush on John in the film, and after he saves her from a pirate, she kisses him. This gives him enough strength to open the gate that the pirates used to lock them all into the castle, allowing them a means of escape. Again, I have to ask, was this really necessary? It's not like Tiger Lily's going to be playing a huge part later on in the story. Her and the rest of the Indians are never seen after the celebration. There is a surprisingly high amount of kid romance in this when there really doesn't need to be. The only positive I can say regarding Tiger Lily is that at least this movie made sure to cast an actual Native American actress as Tiger Lily. Good on you, movie. Just when it looks like Hook might have the upper hand, we hear an all too familiar ticking sound.
Oh no.
Hook, terrified of the crocodile, gets distracted, allowing Peter a chance to escape with the other kids. The Lost Boys celebrate the victory at the Indians' camp, but Peter takes Wendy away into the forest to show her fairies dancing. Cue the awkward romantic dancing sequence between two preteens. Hook and Tinkerbell look at the two of them dancing, sad that it seems Peter has been enchanted by Wendy enough to forget all about them.
I think you and I should talk.
So this might just be me, but I think this is actually supposed to be homaging the Disney version, or at the very least was very heavily influenced by it, because no other version of Peter Pan shows Hook and Tinkerbell working together except the Disney version. So the movie has been building up the romance between Wendy and Peter, and the main conflict with it is that Wendy and Peter both clearly like each other, but Peter is afraid of love because it means he would have to grow up. A lot of the major changes here seem to be that they're focusing on growing up having to do a lot with romance, which isn't exactly how it is in the book. Yes, the book is a coming-of-age story, but it's not primarily focusing on romance between two children. It's clear that Wendy cares very much for Peter, but it doesn't try to force an awkward romance scene down our throats. This is probably the biggest change in the film, and the one that I have the biggest problem with. Peter is supposed to be this tragic, ethereal character that captivates us, but at the same time he constantly is forgetting the world around him.
What else is there?
I don't know. I think it becomes clearer when you grow up.
Well, I will not grow up. You cannot make me.
He even forgets Wendy at various times in the book. There is a sense of detachment or unreachability within him that we don't see in the film. It gets even weirder after the dance sequence. Wendy tries to have Peter admit his feelings, but he gets angry with her, not wanting to feel love because he associates it with adulthood. Hook oversees this argument and has his men kidnap Wendy in the middle of the night to his ship. He tries to convince her to become a pirate, and the entire scene is a bit unnerving. Jason Isaacs also plays Mr. Darling in the film, probably as an homage to the original staging of the Peter Pan play, where they would have the same actor play both characters. It also seems like they're taking a bit of a Freudian angle to the whole growing up conflict. You have Hook being this kind of temptation for adulthood, but add in the fact that he's also playing her father? It's a little creepy.
What would Mother think of my becoming a pirate?
Do we meet again?
Later, when Wendy returns to the hideout, she notices that John and Michael have forgotten their real parents, believing Wendy and Peter to be their mother and father. She tells them that they must return home, and she offers to have the Lost Boys and Peter go back with her. Although the Lost Boys want to go, Peter refuses, but sets up a ferry escort for them to go back home. Hook followed Wendy back and set up an ambush right outside the home, taking the boys hostage. Wendy leaves Peter some pretend medicine, a callback to an earlier part of the movie, before leaving and getting captured herself. Hook, unable to reach Peter, poisons the medicine and returns to the ship. Hook tries one more time to convince Wendy to join him, but she refuses. Tinkerbell rushes to save Peter and manages to stop him from drinking the poison just in time by drinking it herself. Tinkerbell dies, and Peter cries out in anguish. A storm starts to brew and it begins snowing, once again showing that for some reason Peter Pan's emotions are directly tied to Neverland. Hook takes this to mean that Peter drank the poison and is dead. We then get the infamous "I do believe in fairies" shout, which Peter yells over and over in an attempt to bring back Tinkerbell. Peter's cry is heard all throughout Neverland and even back to London, and we see various characters suddenly shouting out "I do believe in fairies."
I do believe in fairies. I do! I do!
I do!
Even the adults, which is kind of odd considering how in the original book it's only the children's cries who are supposed to help Tinkerbell, not adults. Also, how in the world does Mr. Darling still have his job after everything that's happened and now he's suddenly raving about fairies? In any case, it's enough to revive Tinkerbell, and Hook realizes Peter must still be alive. Hook makes Wendy walk the plank once he finally puts together that Peter does in fact love Wendy. Thankfully, Peter saves her and frees the Lost Boys. Then we get a triumphant final battle between the pirates and the Lost Boys, with Peter and Hook once again battling it out. Hook finds out that you need fairy dust to fly and manages to steal some from Tinkerbell going after Peter.
Not bad for an old man.
This is another deviation from the book that I actually really like, because it allows a much more cool-looking fight between Hook and Peter. Hook tries to bring down Peter psychologically by reminding him that Wendy planned to leave him and grow up, and manages to knock him down for the killing blow. When Wendy tries to stop Hook, he allows her a chance to say goodbye. She tells him that she wants to give Peter a thimble, but of course gives him a kiss. This is enough to give Peter super strength.
Split by infinities.
And he manages to regain the upper hand in his fight with Hook. When Hook is above the ocean, the crocodile keeps jumping up to try to eat him, causing him to lose his happy thoughts and be eaten.
Out alone. Done for.
So apparently in this world, kisses are a friggin' superpower, or at least they make you into a Super Saiyan. But what doesn't make sense is they spend the whole movie building up this really important kiss, how it's literally the Deus Ex Machina for Peter and Wendy. But then you randomly have Tiger Lily kissing John, and then he sort of randomly gets powers. He also turns pink. It's kind of confusing and stupid. Stupid's the word I'd go with, yes. Peter calls out to the fairies of the forest, and they cover the ship in fairy dust, allowing it to fly and return the children to their home. Mr. and Mrs. Darling are overjoyed to see that the kids are back, and it seems Mr. Darling has gotten over his strict attitude. When the Lost Boys come in, he even lets them become part of the family. Poor Slightly got lost on the way and ends up being late, but with a bit of help from Tink, Aunt Millicent offers to be his mother, and they all seem to be celebrating, while Peter watches from the window.
You won't forget me, will you?
Me? Forget? Never.
The film ends with the voiceover telling us it is adult Wendy, and how she passes the story of Peter Pan on to her children as they will to their own. So if you couldn't tell, I have a lot of mixed feelings when it comes to this film. I think overall it's a good film. The sets are great, the music's great, the acting is really good for the most part. So just from an acting perspective, this definitely holds up. But when you take everything else into consideration, it's really super average, especially with the really terrible effects, like the blue filter, the CG. It's just, it's really not good. I think this movie also suffers from a bit of a tone problem. From the marketing, it's clear that they were trying to present this as the true Peter Pan story, unlike those other versions that totally deviated from Barry's original work. So it tries to add in darker elements to the story, sometimes when not really needed, but still keeps a lot of humorous moments throughout that definitely clashes tone-wise. It does homage the original Disney film and Hook at times though, like having Smee break the fourth wall a lot. My guess is that was kind of a little homage to the way Smee was in the Hook film. But it's clear that they were trying to be very faithful to the original book. The movie just doesn't stand on its own. It can't escape the shadow of its predecessors. The original book, the Disney film, or Hook. The changes that they made in service of the film don't make it memorable. I really didn't like the romance angle they were going with for this movie because it doesn't really help convey the message of the original book, and it doesn't do enough with the romance to see another side to Peter, like we did with the grown-up version of Peter in Hook. There's so many cool adventure sequences in the book that they really could have focused on more than the romance angle. They have pirates, little kids with swords running around in the forest, secret hideouts, Indians, mermaids, all kinds of cool chase sequences and fights. There's so much that they could have focused on, and yet they chose instead to focus on the preteen romance. I mean, maybe one suggestion, they could have had Wendy be much more progressive. Maybe have her do a lot of the rescuing. Maybe Peter ends up getting into a bit more trouble than what we're actually kind of used to. That might have been another way to make it more modern, make Wendy be much more proactive, and just make this a unique story. So this film leaves me with a bit of a conundrum. I appreciate that they were trying to show the darker side to the Peter Pan story by incorporating more from the original book, but at the same time, was there really a need for this film? I think the only reason I even remember the film at all is having Jason Isaacs be Hook. He's having a ton of fun and he's worth the watch alone. If you enjoyed Hook, you'll probably like this film, and it definitely takes a lot from the film in terms of tone. I'd say give it a watch. So for those of you that have seen the film, do you think this deserves to be remembered or forgotten? What are your thoughts on it? Post your thoughts in comments below. I'm really curious to see if anyone actually remembers this film besides me. Well, thanks guys for joining me on another Patreon sponsored review. I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Hey guys, Calluna here. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up that I have a Patreon page, which is how this review came to be. If you guys don't know what Patreon is, it's this website where you guys can donate a small amount of money a month to get kind of rewards. One of them is choosing something for me to review. Even if it's only a small amount that you can donate a month, it's really greatly appreciated. So feel free to check out the link here and see what kinds of rewards that you can get. I am going to be updating this relatively soon, but for the most part the rewards are going to be basically the same. So other than that, feel free to check me out on Twitter if you're interested in following me there. I usually tend to put updates about videos, polls, any updates to Patreon, that sort of thing. Alright guys, see ya! Bye!
Geek Vision.
Mother and father are fighting again.